Okay, welcome back. We're talking about data compatibility and that feature we talked about where we have implicit conversion. So let's go do one. So I'm going to go down to here and create me yet another one. I'm going to call this one public static void display number. And I'm going to put a double in here, and I'm just going to call it D because I have no idea what the, how about just num? I have no idea. You know, I tried telling you to make sure the variable names make sense, but in this case, I have no idea what the variable represents. It could be, you know, a score on a quiz or, you know, shoe size. I have no idea what it is. So, okay. So then I'm going to do a system.out print ln, and then I'm just going to print the guy out. Okay, cool. Nothing weird here at all, right? All right, let's go back up to here. So this time I'm going to say display, what was it? Display number, wasn't it? Yeah. Display number, and I'm going to say, you know, 12.34. It's going to be happy as a clam, right? Because I'm passing a double to that guy. And then I'm going to turn right around and say display number 12. And the machine did not complain at all, did it? Because that's a small thing, and a small thing fits into a larger thing without any trouble. Now, if I had reversed it around, if down here I had one called display integer, and I tried to pass it a double, then it would have complained. And you know how to fix that when it complains, right? Use the cast operator when you call the method, not down here in the method header. But when you call it, you would use the cast operator to basically to take the hacksaw and cut off the cardboard box before you pass the value down. Okay, so the scope, one more time. So the scope of these things starts on line 44 and ends on line 47, right? Nothing spectacular here. So let's say I have one with multiple arguments. So let's do public static void display more. I don't know. So one's going to be a string with a message, and the other one's going to be a double with a number. Okay, see how I did this? I just strung them together separated by commas. So each one of these guys, so even if I had, just like if you were trying to declare a variable called message and declaring a variable called num, it's not that complicated, right? Okay. Let's do system.out print ln. Let's do actually let's do print message followed by system.out print ln num. Okay, so basically it's just going to print the first part and the second part. So let's go back to here and try it. So here we go. Display more? Is that what I called it? And then comma, I put in 12. Okay, it's not display more. What is it? Oh, helps you if you spell display correctly. Okay, so now I'm passing two things to it. And again, here I didn't have to say this was a string. I didn't have to say this was a double. Right? So the machine's smart enough to figure that out. So passing two parameters is not complicated at all. Not at all. Okay, so what are the rules? Ooh, did your ears perk up when I said that? What are the rules for passing arguments? Well, the first rule is you got to have the same number of arguments. In other words, if your method header has got 3 things, well, then you're going to have to provide 3 things. You can't provide 2, can't provide 18. Must be in the same order. For example, if I have, in this one, I have a string and a double, okay? Great. So the string has to be first, and the double has to be second. There must be compatible data types. We already been through that. So an integer can fit into this with no trouble at all. The things that get passed, now not the method header, because we're talking about passing. In other words, from this point of view. This could be variables, constants, or literals. Now, I'm using literals here the entire time just because it's easy. But, you know, this could be practically anything, right? I mean, I could go in here and say, I don't know, int val is equal to 12, and then just change this to a 12, right? No different whatsoever, right? So literals, constants, and variables, right? No big deal. And if there are multiple arguments, they got to be separated by a comma. And the parentheses are required even if you have no arguments at all, okay? Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is that how arguments are behind the scenes, how they're actually passed to this extra method. Now, this is kind of sort of important, so kind of pay attention. There's a thing called pass by value. That's what they call it, pass by value. And what that means is, before I pass the variable val, okay, before I pass that, I make a Xerox copy of it and then hand you the Xerox copy. And so inside the method, you're just getting a copy of whatever the value of val was, in this case 12, okay? So you can do anything you want to that thing. You can scratch out the 12 and put a 13, and yes, you're changing your copy, but not my copy. All right, so let me give you an example of what we're talking about here. So here we go. We're going to go down to here and create this yet another method. Static void. And I'm going to call it add1. Okay? And this is going to be an integer, I don't know, num. And all I'm going to do is take the num, and then it's equal to num plus 1. Okay? All I'm doing is just adding 1 to it. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So I pass it 12, and then it changes that to a 13. Okay, but it's passing a Xerox copy. So let's go back up to here. And I'm going to say add1 val. Right, because val is equal to 12. And then I'm going to turn right around and say, what is the value of val? Okay, if you've been paying attention, you know what the answer is going to be. Because I made a Xerox copy of val, passed it down to here, and all it did was just take this and add 1 to it, but it's doing that on the Xerox copy, not on the real one. So, the value for val is still 12. Okay? That's what pass by value means. I make a Xerox copy of it, and then pass you the Xerox copy. And you can do anything you want to that thing. You can wad it up and catch it on fire, scratch out the value and put another value in. You can do all sorts of things, and you're not changing the original at all. That would be some really spooky magic, is if you crossed out the 12 on your copy, it magically crossed out the 12 on my original. That would be kind of spooky. Okay, that kind of makes sense? All right. So let's talk about local variables one more time. So a variable that's declared inside a method is called a local variable, which for us has been 99.9% of the time. Every single variable we've ever created was a local variable. There was one scenario a couple of weeks back where I created a constant up here above the... So that one is not a local variable. In fact, we call those things global variables. So if I build me a variable right here, like inside the class, but not inside a method, that's a global variable. But everything else, like this guy, that is a local variable. Okay. So again, we've been doing this for weeks now, so it's nothing new here. Okay. So obviously the scope is going to be limited to the stuff inside the curly braces, right? That kind of makes sense. Now, they go ahead and tell you that local variables don't have an initial value, which means if you go in here and you say, for example, I'll go down to here and I say int kumquat, and just leave it like that and move on, and then turn right around and say system.out println kumquat. What's it going to do? Is it going to say, oh, well, I know what you meant. You really, no. I get a red squiggly that basically says the kumquat variable might not have been initialized, okay? Which means there are no default values. You have to give it. So every time you create a local variable, you need to give it a value at the same time. Well, maybe not at the same time. You can declare it and then assign it later, but okay, you know what I'm talking about. So, no default values. You have to do that. And again, we've been doing this since day one, so this is really not something new. Okay, now it's time for us to return something from a value, from a method. Okay, so I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to comment this out because the whole point of that was to show you that it didn't work. Okay, I'm going to create me yet another one here. So I'm going to call this one public static, but not void this time. This time it's going to return an integer. And I'm going to call this one add. Well, I'll just call it add. I think I can. No, I can't call it add. That's I can tell by the green that it's a reserved word. So add 2. And so I pass it two things, num1 and num2. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and do this kind of the long way, which would be create me a variable called answer. I like answer, okay? And I give it an initial value to start with. And then I say answer is equal to num1 plus num2. And then I use this new thing called return. Return answer. Now, I like to use the word answer for all of those local variables that are designed to return something because it just kind of makes sense in English. I say, this thing returns the answer. Okay, now you don't have to do that. I'm just saying that's the way I do it because it kind of sort of makes sense to me that the variable that's being created, manipulated, and returned is something called answer. It's cute, okay? So let's do this. So I'm going to go up to here and we're going to do something more. I'm going to go to here and we're going to add two things together. So I'm going to say add 2, I don't know, 1, 2, which obviously should be 3, right? Okay, let's do this. Okay, it worked, but I didn't actually see anything. Well, why is that? Well, because it has a return value. To use this, I need to put this thing on the right-hand side of an assignment operator or used as a value, okay? So what if I did this? I said int wombat is equal to, and then turn right around and ask what wombat is. Okay, that kind of makes sense. So this now appears on the right-hand side of an assignment operator. Because the method returns an integer, it can appear anywhere a integer literal would appear. Okay? And so, oh, I didn't mean print error. Ha ha ha. Okay, fine. All right, so I could have done it this way. Because remember, I just told you that it'll appear anywhere where an integer literal can appear, right? Okay, so let's try this. Okay, so if an integer literal can appear right here, right? So this should come up with the exact same answer. Yay! Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so you guys know how this works.